I never imagined that my life would take such a sudden turn on a summer night in Madrid. The stifling heat of July filtered through the windows of our small apartment in the Lavapiés neighborhood, but the real suffocation was yet to come. I remember I was sitting on the couch, reviewing some reports from the marketing agency where I worked, when Daniel, my husband, walked through the door with an expression I had never seen on him before. "Olivia, we need to talk," he said in a voice I didn't recognize. I left the papers on the table and looked at him, intrigued and a little worried. Daniel had always been a reserved man, but lately his attitude had changed. He had become more distant, more critical of my work and my aspirations. But nothing prepared me for what he was about to tell me. He sat in front of me, hands clasped, knuckles white with tension. "This marriage can only work if you are willing to make sacrifices," she began. My heart skipped a beat. Sacrifices? Hadn't he already sacrificed enough? I had left my native Seville to move with him to Madrid. I had supported his career while I built my own. But I remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "My mother needs help," Daniel continued, his voice growing colder. "I hope you quit your job and move in with her. She needs a full-time caregiver and housekeeper." For a moment, I thought he was joking. Quit my job? Become my mother-in-law's maid? She had worked hard to get to where she was. She was an account director at a growing agency. I couldn't throw all that overboard. "Daniel," I began, trying to stay calm, "you know how important my career is to me. We can find another solution, hire someone to take care of your mother, or..." But he interrupted me with a coldness that chilled my blood. "If you don't do this for our family, you leave me no choice but to file for divorce." The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel's words hung in the air, heavy, threatening. I looked around at our small apartment full of memories. The photos of our wedding on the beach of Barceloneta, the souvenirs from our trips through Europe, the books we shared. Everything seemed far away now, as if it belonged to another life. "Are you serious?" I finally managed to articulate. Daniel's response was a simple nod. There was no love in his eyes, only determination. At that moment, I realized that the man I had married 5 years ago no longer existed. The next few days were a roller coaster of emotions. I tried to reason with Daniel, find a middle ground. I suggested that he work part-time and dedicate the rest of his time to his mother. I even suggested that his mother move in with us. But Daniel remained adamant. It was all or nothing. My co-workers noticed something was wrong. Marta, my best friend at the agency, invited me to have a few beers after work. Sitting on a terrace in the Plaza Mayor, with the bustle of tourists and the smell of potato omelette floating in the air, I told him everything. "But are you stupid?" Marta exclaimed, almost spilling her beer. "You can't let him do this to you. You've worked so hard to get where you are." He was right, of course. I remembered all the sleepless nights preparing presentations, the weekends sacrificed for an important project, the satisfaction of seeing my clients grow thanks to my strategies. I couldn't throw all that overboard. But then I thought about Daniel, about our years together, about the plans we had made. Was I really willing to throw away our marriage for this? The doubt gnawed at me. I decided that I had to know my mother-in-law's situation better before making a decision. Maybe if I talked to her, we could find a solution that would satisfy everyone. I asked Daniel to arrange a visit. The day I went to see Estella, my mother-in-law, the sky in Madrid was grey, as if it reflected my state of mind. Their house was in a residential neighborhood on the outskirts, an area of semi-detached houses with well-tended gardens. As soon as I entered, the smell of mothballs and stale food hit me. Estella welcomed me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "So you finally deigned to come," was his greeting. It was no secret that we had never gotten along, but his hostility surprised me. I sat on a plastic-covered couch while she listed all the tasks she expected me to do: daily cleaning, shopping, cooking to her liking, and even helping with her social gatherings. "And of course," he added with a wicked smile, "you'll have to quit that little job of yours. Decent women stay at home taking care of their families." I felt like I had been slapped. Little job. I had spent years building my career. He was about to retort when Daniel entered the room. I expected him to defend me, to explain to his mother how important my work was. But he just nodded, as if he agreed with everything she said. That night, back at our apartment, I had a long conversation with myself. I thought about my parents, how they had always encouraged me to pursue my dreams. In my mother, who had been one of the first women in her town to go to university. In my grandmother, who had worked in the fields while raising 6 children. How could I give up everything they had fought for? The next morning, with the first rays of sun streaming through the window, I made my decision. I got up before Daniel and made coffee. When he walked into the kitchen, I looked him in the eye and said, "I'm not going to quit my job. I'm not going to become your mother's maid. If that means you want a divorce, then so be it." Daniel's expression hardened. Without saying a word, he went to his study and returned with some papers. They were the divorce documents, already prepared. My heart broke into 1,000 pieces, but my resolve remained firm. That same afternoon, I started packing my things. Every object I kept in my suitcases was a memory, a broken promise. Tears ran down my cheeks, but I didn't allow myself to hesitate. I knew I was doing the right thing, even if it hurt. Marta offered me to stay in her apartment until I found a place of my own. As I loaded my bags into a taxi, I took one last look at what had been my home. Daniel watched me from the window, his expression unreadable. For a moment, our eyes met, and I saw a hint of doubt in his eyes. But it was only a moment. The taxi took off, and with it, my previous life was left behind. That night, lying on Marta's couch, with the noise of Gran Via filtering through the window, I felt more alone than ever. But also, strangely enough, I felt free. I had chosen my path, I had defended my principles. And although the future was uncertain, he knew he had made the right decision. What I didn't know then was that this was just the beginning. That Daniel and Estella would not be satisfied with my departure, that they would try to destroy everything I had built. But that is another story, a story of struggle, resilience and, ultimately, triumph. A story that was just beginning to be written on that summer night in Madrid, when I decided that my dignity was worth more than any marriage. The days that followed my decision not to give in to Daniel's ultimatum were a whirlwind of emotions. I temporarily moved to Marta's apartment in the bustling Malasana neighborhood, surrounded by the constant hustle and bustle of bars and vintage shops. While I greatly appreciated their support, I knew I needed to find my own space to start over. One morning, while we drinking coffee on a terrace in the Plaza del Dos de Mayo, Marta suggested something to me that would change the course of events. "Olivia, I know it's the last thing you want to do, but I think you should talk to your mother-in-law face to face. Maybe if you explain your situation to her, you could come to an agreement." I laughed bitterly. "Talk to Estella? That woman hates me since the day she met me." But as the words left my mouth, a part of me knew that Marta was right. If I wanted any chance of saving my marriage, or at least ending things civilly, I had to try. So, gathering courage, I called Estella and made an appointment to see her. I chose a day when I knew Daniel would be working. He didn't want his presence to complicate things even more. On the agreed day, I found myself again in front of Estella's house in that residential neighborhood on the outskirts of Madrid. The previously impeccable garden showed signs of neglect. Some weeds were showing through the rose bushes and the grass needed an urgent mowing. I wondered if Estella really needed as much help as Daniel had implied. I rang the doorbell and waited, my heart pounding in my chest. When the door opened, I came face to face with my mother-in-law. His expression, a mixture of contempt and satisfaction, made me feel as if I had just bitten into a lemon. Wow, Estella said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "So the prodigal daughter-in-law is back. Are you tired of playing at being an independent woman yet?" I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was here to try to resolve things peacefully. "Hello, Estella. Thank you for having me. I would like us to talk about the current situation." Estella stepped aside, allowing me to enter the house. The interior was as ornate as I remembered, full of antique furniture and family photographs in which, I noted with some bitterness, I did not appear in any of them. We sat in the living room, she in her favorite chair and I on the plastic-covered couch that made noise every time I moved. The silence stretched between us, heavy and tense. Finally, I decided to break the ice. "Estella, I know our relationship has never been easy, but I hope we can talk like adults about what's going on." She gave a dry laugh. "Talking like adults? Girl, you don't know what it's like to be an adult. A grown woman knows her place." I felt anger begin to boil inside me, but I forced myself to remain calm. "My place is where I decide it is. I have worked very hard to get to where I am in my career and..." "Career?" Estella interrupted me with a snort. "Do you call playing with drawings in an office a career? That's not a real job. A real job is taking care of your family, your home. That's what a good wife does." I took a deep breath before answering. "Estella, I understand that those are your values, but times have changed. Women can have a career and a family. It doesn't have to be one thing or the other." "Bullshit," she exclaimed, hitting the arm of her chair with her hand. "In my time, women knew their duty. I took care of my husband and my son without complaint. And you know what? I was happy doing it. But of course, you are too selfish to understand that." His words hurt me more than I wanted to admit. I'm not selfish for wanting to fulfill myself professionally. I love Daniel, but I also love my job. Why do I have to choose? Estella leaned forward, her eyes shining with malice. "Because that's how the world works, my dear. Men work, women take care of the home. It's the natural order of things. And if you can't accept that, then you don't deserve my son." I felt tears threatening to come, but I refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry. "Daniel and I are a team. Or at least, I thought we were. A marriage is a partnership, not a dictatorship." "Huh?" Estella exclaimed. "That's what those ridiculous modern ideas have made you believe. A marriage works when the woman knows her place and accepts it with grace." I got up from the couch, unable to listen any longer. "I think this conversation is getting us nowhere." Estella also stood up, her face flushed with anger. "You're right about one thing, girl. This conversation is getting us nowhere because you are too stubborn and selfish to see the truth. My poor Daniel, how could he marry someone like you?" Those words were the last straw. Your poor Daniel. The same Daniel who's willing to throw away 5 years of marriage because I don't want to become your personal servant. Maybe you should ask yourself what kind of son you've raised. I saw how fury flared in Estella's eyes. For a moment, I was afraid he was going to slap me. Instead, he stepped closer to me, his voice a venomous hiss. "Listen to me carefully, Olivia. You can continue playing at being a modern, independent woman if you want, but I'm warning you one thing. If you don't accept your place in this family, you will regret it. I will make sure that you lose everything you think you have gained." A shiver ran down my spine at the thinly veiled threat in his words. Without saying anything else, I turned around and left the house, slamming the door behind me with more force than necessary. As I walked down the street, feeling the Madrid sun on my face, I realized that I had been naive to think that I could reason with Estella. It wasn't just a matter of different points of view, it was a fundamental clash of values and worldviews. That night, back at Marta's apartment, I told her everything that had happened. My friend listened to me silently, refilling my wine glass every time I emptied it. "Do you know what the worst thing is?" I finally said, my voice breaking with emotion. "A part of me understands why Daniel is doing this. He has grown up with those values, with that idea of what a family should be. But it hurts me that he can't see beyond that he can't value what I bring to the table to our relationship." Marta took me by the hand. "Ollie, listen to me carefully. You haven't done anything wrong. You are an incredible, intelligent, capable woman. If Daniel can't see that, if he would rather please his mother than support his wife, then he is the one who loses." His words comforted me, but they couldn't erase the pain and confusion I felt. That night, lying on Marta's sofa bed, looking at the ceiling and listening to the distant sound of the city, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let Estella or Daniel make me doubt myself. If I had to start from scratch, I would do it. But I would do it on my own terms. The next morning, I got up early and went to the office. My colleagues welcomed me with supportive smiles. The news of my separation had spread quickly. I immersed myself in work, grateful for the distraction and sense of normalcy it provided. During my lunch break, I received a message from Daniel. My heart skipped a beat at the sight, a mix of hope and fear. But the content of the message chilled me. I've spoken to my mother. She says you were rude and aggressive to her. Olivia, how could you? This just confirms that we made the right decision in separating. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Not only had Estella completely misrepresented our meeting, but Daniel had believed her without even bothering to listen to my side. In that moment, I realized that the battle ahead was going to be much harder than I had imagined. But as I looked out the office window, watching the bustle of N via under the midday sun, I felt a renewed determination grow inside me. Estella and Daniel could try to break me, but I wasn't going to allow it. I had my job, my friends, my dignity. And with that, she was ready to face whatever came. The days that followed my disastrous encounter with Estella became an emotional roller coaster. Every morning I woke up hoping it had all been a nightmare, only to be faced with the stark reality that my life was falling apart. Marta's apartment, although cozy, constantly reminded me that I no longer had a home of my own. One afternoon, while I was checking some emails on my laptop, I received a message from Daniel. My heart skipped a beat when I saw his name on the screen. "We need to talk. Come home tonight," he said briefly. I felt a mix of anxiety and hope. Maybe, I thought, he had reconsidered. Maybe we could fix things. I got ready carefully, choosing a dress that I knew she liked, and headed to our now-her apartment in Lavapies. The neighborhood was bustling with life as always, with the spicy aroma of Indian and Moroccan restaurants wafting through the air. For a moment, I allowed myself to dream of a reconciliation, of returning to the life we had built together. But those dreams were shattered the moment I crossed the threshold of the door. Daniel was waiting for me in the living room, his face a mask of cold determination. There was no trace of the warm, loving man I had married. "Sit down, Olivia," he said, pointing to the couch. His tone was that of a boss speaking to a problematic employee, not that of a husband addressing his wife. I sat up, feeling the knot in my stomach tighten. "I have spoken to my lawyer," he began without preamble. "The divorce papers will be ready in a few days. I want this to be quick and clean." His words hit me like a punch in the stomach. "Quick and clean?" I repeated, incredulously. "Daniel, are we really going to end up like this? 5 years of marriage and you don't even want to try to fix it?" He looked at me with a mix of pity and frustration. "Fix what, Olivia? You've already made it very clear that your career is more important than our family. My mother told me how you treated her. Frankly, I don't recognize you." I felt anger mix with sadness inside me. "Your mother? Are you really going to believe her over me? Daniel, you know how she is. She's always tried to separate us." But it was like talking to a wall. Daniel shook his head. "My mother only wants the best for us. She always has. You're the one who refuses to see things as they are." In that moment, something broke inside me. I realized that the man I had loved, with whom I had shared dreams and plans for the future, no longer existed. In his place was a stranger, molded by years of manipulation by Estella. "Okay," I said, standing up. "If this is what you want, go ahead. But don't expect me to stay silent while you and your mother distort reality." Daniel stood up, his face hardening. "I suggest you think carefully before doing something you might regret. Remember that I know all your secrets, Olivia." That veiled threat left me cold. What secrets? What was he referring to? But before I could ask him, he continued, "You better gather your things and leave. You have nothing to do here anymore." On shaky legs, I headed to our bedroom, now just his, and began packing my belongings. Every object I put in the suitcase was a memory, a broken promise. The photos of our wedding on the beach of Barceloneta, the little quixote that he gave me on our first anniversary, the scarf that I knitted for him one particularly cold winter. All those fragments of our life together, now reduced to simple possessions that had to be taken. While I was packing, I heard Daniel talking on the phone in the living room. His voice was low, but I could clearly make out that he was talking to Estella. "Yes, Mom, she's leaving now. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. Yes, I know you were right about her." Those words were like stabs to my heart. Not only was he kicking me out of my own home, but he was conspiring with his mother against me. The betrayal was complete. When I left the bedroom with my suitcase, Daniel quickly hung up the phone. He looked at me with a mixture of contempt and pity that made my stomach turn. "I hope you're satisfied," I said, struggling to maintain my composure. "You and your mother got what you wanted." He shrugged, as if my pain meant nothing to him. "You caused it, Olivia. If you had been a good wife, none of this would have happened." Those words were the last straw. A good wife? You mean a submissive servant like your mother wants me to be? I'm sorry, Daniel, but I'm worth more than that. And one day you'll realize what you've lost. Without waiting for his response, I grabbed my suitcase and left the apartment, closing the door behind me with more force than necessary. In the hallway, I allowed myself a moment of weakness. I leaned against the wall and let the tears flow freely. The pain was almost physical, like a part of myself had been torn away. But I couldn't stay there forever. With a supreme effort, I wiped away my tears and went out into the street. The Madrid afternoon sun hit me hard, as if the world wanted to remind me that life continued, with or without Daniel. I walked aimlessly through the streets of Lavapis, dragging my suitcase behind me. The neighbors looked at me with curiosity, but no one dared to ask. Finally, my steps took me to Retiro Park. I sat on a bench in front of the lake, watching the couples strolling around in boats, oblivious to my pain. It was there, surrounded by the serene beauty of the park, that I made a decision. I wasn't going to let Daniel and Estella destroy me. If they wanted war, they would have it. I took out my phone and called Marta. "I need a lawyer," I told him as soon as he answered. "The best you can find." Marta's voice sounded worried on the other end of the line. "Ollie, what happened?" I told him everything between tears and sobs. Marta listened to me in silence, only interrupting to murmur words of support. "Come home right now," he said when I finished. "You're not alone in this, do you hear me? Let's fight." Those words were like a balm for my wounded soul. I wasn't alone. I had friends, I had my job, I had my dignity. And with that, I could face anything. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. I met with several lawyers, collected documents, tried to anticipate every move Daniel and Estella could make. But nothing prepared me for what came next. One morning, while I was heading to the office, I received a call from my boss. His voice sounded tense, worried. "Olivia, I need you to come to my office immediately." As soon as I walked into the agency, I knew something was wrong. My classmates looked at me with a mixture of pity and curiosity. Some looked away, as if they didn't want to face me. In my boss's office, an unpleasant surprise awaited me. Sitting next to him was Estella, with a triumphant smile on her face. "Olivia," my boss began, visibly uncomfortable. "Ms. Estella Garcia has informed us of some irregularities in your work. She says that you have been sharing confidential information about our clients with competitors." I was out of breath. It was a lie, a slander so absurd that I almost laughed. But my boss's serious expression made me realize the seriousness of the situation. "That's ridiculous," I protested. "I would never do something like that. Do you have proof?" Estella intervened then, her voice sweet as poison. "Oh, dear, the evidence will be arriving soon. But given the seriousness of the allegations, I'm sure your boss will want to investigate thoroughly before making a decision." My boss nodded, avoiding eye contact. "I'm sorry, Olivia, but we will have to temporarily suspend you while we investigate these allegations." I felt like the world was collapsing around me. Not only had I lost my husband and my home, I was now also in danger of losing my career, everything I had fought for. As I left the office, with my colleagues' gazes fixed on my back, I realized that the war that Daniel and Estella had declared was much dirtier than I had imagined. They were ready to destroy every aspect of my life. But in the midst of despair, I felt a new determination growing inside me. If they wanted war, they would have it. I was not the submissive and obedient woman they wanted me to be. She was a fighter, and she was going to show them what she was made of. That night, sitting on the small balcony of Marta's apartment, looking at the lights of Madrid, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to defend myself, I was going to fight back. I was going to fight not only for myself, but for all the women who had faced similar situations. The battle was just beginning, and I was ready to win. The days that followed my suspension from work were the darkest of my life. I felt like I was in free fall, with nothing to hold on to. Marta's small apartment, which before seemed like a refuge, now felt like a cage. I spent hours looking out the window, watching life continue on the streets of Madrid, wondering how it had gotten to this point. But as the saying goes, the night is darkest just before dawn. And my dawn came in the form of a phone call. It was a Tuesday morning when my cell phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Olivia Garcia, a female voice asked on the other end of the line. I'm Carmen Vega, from Digital Innovation. I've heard very good things about you and I was wondering if you would be interested in an interview. For a moment, I was speechless. Innovation Digital was one of the most prestigious marketing agencies in Spain. Getting an interview there was the dream of any professional in the sector. When I finally regained my speech, I accepted the invitation with a mix of excitement and nervousness. The interview was scheduled for 2 days later. I spent every minute preparing, reviewing my portfolio, researching the company. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a purpose, a goal to work toward. On the day of the interview, I dressed in my best suit, an elegant but modern outfit that Marta had helped me choose. You're going to rock it, he told me as he hugged me goodbye. His words gave me the confidence I needed. The digital innovation offices were in a modern building in the financial heart of Madrid. As soon as I entered, I felt transported to another world. The glass walls, the open spaces, the vibrant energy, it all screamed innovation and creativity. Carmen Vega turned out to be an impressive woman, with a presence that filled the room. During the interview, he asked me difficult questions, tested me with practical cases, but also listened to me with genuine interest when I told him about my ideas and my vision for digital marketing. At the end of the interview, Carmen looked at me intently and said, Olivia, I'm going to be direct. I've heard rumors about your current situation. I know that you have been suspended from your previous job under accusations of misconduct. My heart sank. Had Estella's influence reached this far? But before he could say anything, Carmen continued, however, I have also investigated your background. Your achievements speak for themselves. I don't know what is behind those accusations, and frankly, I don't care. What I care about is your talent and your potential. And I think you would be an excellent addition to our team. Tears threatened to well up in my eyes, but I held them back. With a trembling voice, I thanked her for her trust and assured her that I would not let her down. Excellent, Carmen said with a smile. Because the position is yours if you want it. Director of Digital Strategy. It's a step up from your previous position, but I think you're more than ready for the challenge. I left the office feeling like I was floating. Not only had I gotten a new job, but it was a promotion, a recognition of all my effort and dedication. For the first time in weeks, I felt like the future was bright again. That night, Marta insisted that we go out to celebrate. We went for tapas at La Latina, toasting with red wine at each bar. With each glass, I felt a part of me come back to life. Laughter, absent for so long, burst forth from my throat again. For you, Ollie, Marta said, raising her glass. For your resurgence. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I dove into my new job with renewed energy. Digital innovation was everything I had dreamed of and more. My ideas were listened to, valued and implemented. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly appreciated for my talent and my efforts. But not everything was rosy. Despite my new beginning, the ghosts of the past still haunted me. One afternoon, as I was leaving the office, I saw Daniel waiting for me on the sidewalk in front. My heart skipped a beat, a mixture of fear and anger taking over me. Olivia, he called as he crossed the street toward me. We need to talk. I stood firm, determined not to be intimidated. We have nothing to talk about, Daniel. Everything is in the hands of the lawyers now. His face hardened. You think you can just move on like nothing happened? You think I don't know about your new job? I felt a chill. How did he know? Was he following me? My life is no longer your business, I snapped. And if you think you can intimidate me, you are very wrong. He moved closer, his voice a menacing whisper. Careful, Olivia. Remember that I know all your secrets. I can make your life hell if I want. In that moment, something broke inside me. All the fear, all the insecurity he had felt turned into a burning rage. My secrets. I shouted, not caring who could hear us. What secrets, Daniel? That I worked hard to get where I am. That I refused to be your mother's servant. Or maybe you mean the secret that you are a coward manipulated by a toxic woman who doesn't care. Can you stand to see other women succeed? Daniel stepped back, surprised by my outburst. I had never seen me like this, with so much anger, with so much determination. It's over, Daniel, I continued, my calmer but no less firm voice. No more threats, no more intimidation. If you want war, you will have it. But I warn you one thing, you don't know who you are getting into. I turned around and walked away, leaving him stopped there, speechless. I felt his gaze stuck on my back, but I didn't care. For the first time since all this nightmare began, I felt powerful, invincible. That night, sitting on the balcony of Marta's floor, looking at the lights in Madrid, I made a decision. It was time to stop being the victim. It was time to take control of my life. The next day, I called my lawyer. I want to get back, I said. I want to sue Daniel and Estella for defamation and harassment. My lawyer, an experienced woman named Sophia, listened to me carefully while telling her everything that had happened, from the veiled threats to the attempts to sabotage my career. It won't be easy, Sophia warned me. But we have a solid case. Are you sure you want to move on with this? I've never been sure of something in my life, I replied without hesitation. The following months were a roller coaster of emotions. The legal process was exhausting, every day brought new challenges. Daniel and Estella counterated with everything they had, inventing lies, trying to stain my reputation. But I was no longer the same insecure woman that had been. Each attack only made me stronger, more determined. At work, I channeled all that energy in innovative projects that impressed my bosses and clients equally. My team in digital innovation became my second family. We stayed late working in campaigns, sharing pizzas and laughs. Little by little, the Olivia who had been, the safe and ambitious woman, emerged again. One afternoon, while presenting a new digital marketing strategy for an important client, I saw Carmen smiling from the bottom of the room. When I finished, among enthusiastic applause, he approached me. I'm impressed, Olivia, he told me. You have not only fulfilled my expectations, you have far exceeded them. I want our new strategic innovation department to lead. That night, while I celebrated my ascent with Marta and my new friends on a terrace with a view to the royal palace, I realized how much my life had changed in such a short time. He had lost a lot, it's true, but he had also won so much. The legal process continued its course, but I was no longer defined. It was just part of my life, not all my life. I had recovered my passion, my joy of living. And no one, neither Daniel, nor Estella, nor anyone, could take it again. While I raised my cup to provide, I looked around, to the smiling faces of my friends, to the lights of the city I loved so much, and I knew with certainty that the best was yet to come. I had resurfaced from the ashes, stronger and brighter than ever. And this was just the beginning. Just when I thought my life began to stabilize, fate had prepared another surprise. It was a Friday afternoon, and he had just got home after a year exhausting but satisfactory at work. The small floor I had rented in the Arganzuela neighborhood had become my shelter, a space that was only mine and that represented my new beginning. I was about to open the door when I heard family voices that froze my blood. There, in the landing of my floor, Daniel and Estella were. His faces showed a mixture of arrogance and determination that made me take a step back instinctively. Wow, go, Estella said with a smile that didn't get to his eyes. Finally, you are worthy. Do you know how long we have been waiting? Daniel took a step forward, his hard and cold expression. Olivia, this has to end. You can't keep living here as if nothing had happened. I was paralyzed for a moment, unable to process what was happening. How had they found out where he lived? What did they mean that I couldn't continue living there? I took a deep breath, trying to keep calm. I don't know what they are doing here, but I ask you to leave. This is my home and they are not welcome. Estella released a dry laugh. Your home? What naive are you, dear? Do you not know that this floor belongs to Daniel's family? We have come to recover what our is. I felt that the ground moved under my feet. What were they talking about? I had rented this floor completely legal. I had signed a contract. They are wrong, I said, trying to make my voice tremble. I have a rental contract in order. This floor has nothing to do with you. Daniel took another step towards me, his low and threatening voice. Olivia, don't do it more difficult. You know very well that during our marriage, many of our properties were in my name. This floor is one of them. And now that we are no longer together, you have no right to live here. Rabies began to bubble inside me, replacing the initial fear. That is ridiculous, Daniel. I rented this floor after our separation. It has nothing to do with you or your family. Estella intervened, his sweet but poisonous voice. Oh, dear, do you really think it was a coincidence that you will find this floor so fast and at such a good price? Daniel made sure that it was. It was part of our plan. My mind was spinning. Plan? What plan? Had they manipulated everything from the beginning? I don't believe them, I said, my firmer voice than I felt. And even if it were true, which I doubt, they can't simply come here and throw me. There are laws, do you know? Daniel smiled, a cold and calculator smile that had never seen him before. Laws? Olivia, dear, have you forgotten who I am? I have contacts, influences. I can make you thrown from here in the blink of an eye. At that moment, something inside me broke. All fear, all the insecurity he had felt became a burning fury. I was not going to let me intimidate me, to take away how little I had managed to rebuild. Very good, I said, taking out my phone. If they are so sure of their rights, they will not mind waiting for the police to arrive, right? I saw how confidence in his faces faltered for a moment. Clearly, they did not expect me to offer resistance. Don't be ridiculous, Olivia, said Estella, his voice losing some of his artificial sweetness. There is no need to involve the police in family matters. But I was already marking the emergency number. Family issues? You stopped being my family at the time you decided to destroy my life. While we waited for the arrival of the police, the atmosphere in the landing became increasingly tense. Daniel and Estella alternated between evening threats and false attempts to reason with me. I stayed firm, leaning against the door of my floor, refusing to let them in. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, we listened to the sound of steps up the stairs. 2 national police officers appeared, they're serious and professionals. Good afternoon, said one of them. We have received a call for a property dispute. Can anyone explain what is happening here? Before I could open my mouth, Estella took a step forward, her face transformed into a affliction mask. Oh, officers, how good they are here. This woman, he said, pointing to me, she refuses to leave a property that belongs to my son. We have tried to reason with her, but refuses to listen. I felt that the blood boiled at his impudence, but forced myself to keep calm. That is not true, officers, I said. I rented this floor legally several months ago. I have a rental contract in order and I have paid all my receipts promptly. These people, I told Daniel and Estella, they are trying to intimidate me to make me go. The agents looked at all 3, evaluating the situation. Do you have documents to prove what he says? Asked one of them. Of course, I replied, grateful to have maintained all my papers in order. If you allow me to enter my floor, I can show them right now. Daniel tried to interpose. Officers, I assure you that this floor belongs to my family. We have the property titles that demonstrate it. The agent raised a hand to stop him. Lord, if you have those documents, I suggest that you present them at the police station. For now, we will review the Mrs. S documents. I entered my flow. Aware of Daniel's furious looks and Estella behind my back. With trembling hands, I took out my rental contract, payment receipts, and other relevant documents. The agents reviewed them carefully while I waited, with my heart beating 1,000 per hour. Finally, one of them spoke. Madam, Your documents seem to be in order. According to this, you have a valid rental contract for this floor. I felt a huge weight rose from my shoulders. But the feeling of relief lasted little. This is ridiculous. Estella exploded. Don't you see that these documents are false? This woman is a liar and a thief. I demand that they arrest her right now. The agents turned to her, her expressions hardening. Madam, I suggest that you calm down. Making accusations without evidence is a serious matter. Daniel tried to intervene, his tense voice. Officers, there must be some error. I assure you that this floor belongs to my family. If they could give us a few days to present our documents. But the agent interrupted him. I'm sorry, sir, but based on the evidence we have right now, the lady has the right to remain on this floor. If you think you have a legitimate claim on the property, I suggest you solve it by the appropriate legal channels. I saw how Daniel's confidence and Estella fell apart. For a moment, they seemed lost, as if they didn't know what to do. Estella was the first to recover. With a last hate look towards me, he addressed the agents. This will not remain like this. Do you have an idea who we are? We will make them regret this. The agent took a step towards her, her firm voice. Madam, I warn him that he is touching the line of the threat to an officer of the law. I suggest that he retires right now before we are forced to take more serious measures. Daniel grabbed his mother by the arm, pulling her towards the stairs. Let's go, Mom. This is not over, Olivia, he told me over my shoulder. We will see you in court. 6 disappear downstairs, a mixture of relief and anxiety stirring in my stomach. The agents stayed one more moment, making sure everything was in order. Lady, one of them told me before leaving, I suggest you be careful. If they bother her again or if she feels threatened in any way, do not hesitate to call us immediately. I nodded, grateful for their professionalism and support. When I finally closed the door behind them, I dropped to the ground, my legs trembling. The tears he had been containing began to flow freely. But these were not tears of fear or despair. They were tears of relief, triumph. For the first time since all this nightmare began, I felt that I had control. He had faced Daniel and Estella, had defended my rights, and had won. That night, while looking out the window of my small floor, seeing the lights of Madrid shine in the distance, I felt that something had changed inside me. She was no longer the victim, the scared woman fleeing from her ex-husband and mother-in-law's threats. She was a fighter, a survivor. I knew this was not the end. Daniel and Estella would fulfill their threat of taking me to court. But I was no longer afraid of them. I was ready to face what I came. Because now I knew I had the truth on my side, and that made me invincible.